Welcome to the Stress-Free Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. As always, I want to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And check out all of my nonfiction and children's books on Amazon, and check out the stressfreedentist.com for any upcoming events. And if you're feeling you're a dental professional that's burnt out, or you just feel stuck or want to get to that next level, visit the International Academy of Dental Life Coaches or www.iadlc.com, and we'll get you matched up with a life coach that understands dentistry. I also wanted to thank our amazing sponsor, Equa Marketing. They have helped me and my practice over the years to improve with SEO and website performance. And to find out how you can make your practice dominate in your area, go to www.equa.com/MSMSFD to book your complimentary meeting. Again, that's www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. And today I'm joined by Dr. Mark Davis. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mark, I want to hear all about Dental Simplified and your consulting and speaking career. But first, let's get into how did you even decide to become a dentist? Tell me about your origin story.
Great story. I came from a medical background. My dad was an orthopedic surgeon and felt like that was not the right path for me. I wanted more confined hours and days, and dentistry seemed like be the right fit. And it's been already 37 years, and I've been practicing ever since and still practicing. Long journey.
And where did you go to dental school?
I went to Loma Linda University in Southern California. I've had what I would classify as three different periods in my career. I was down there in Southern California for the first 10 years of my practice. I was an associate. I did own my first practice in that period of time. I moved to the state of Washington for 13 years and had 4 or 5 practices there that were fairly large, and it was a really good run there. And my last block of time has been back in California. Currently, I'm in Manhattan Beach, but I've had practices in the central coast of California and Central Valley.
And just take me back to your journey in dental school. You said you went to Loma Linda. What was your experience like in dental school?
Interesting. I went right from college to dental school, and I was burnt out. I probably needed a little time off. In fact, my sophomore year, I got up in the middle of a test in my first quarter of that year, and I walked out. I went up to the dean's office and I said, I just want to know if I can come back. And they said, yeah, you can. And I was out of there. So I took a year off right in the middle of it, not knowing I was going to come back. I just wanted to know if I had the opportunity. And I left and did some interesting things. One of them was I was a ski instructor. I knew that's what I thought I wanted to do, and didn't make any money. Came back, had a couple of really lousy jobs, and decided to go back into dental school. And even when I got out of dental school, I was like, oh no, I don't know if this is the right fit for me. I've carved out an interesting journey of owning quite a few different practices through my career, and I've made it interesting. So
did you say you actually got up in the middle of an exam and walked out, and that you asked for a leave of absence from dental school?
And I was out of there in 5 days from the time I walked out of a test. Yeah. I didn't, it was very spontaneous. It was very reactionary. And I tried not to be too very reactionary, but I felt overwhelmed, and I didn't ask my parents. I didn't ask for permission. I just marched up there and said, I just need out.
Was that something that was kind of bubbling up, or did it just all of a sudden come crashing down during?
I think it was, I went in there my freshman year. I did fine. I didn't understand the volume of work that I needed, just for studying and all those things that went along with dental school. And I started my sophomore year, and it just didn't start out great. And I just felt this need of, I just got to go. And it was a risky move because who knew if I'd come back, but it was probably one of my better moves in life that I, it shed a light on something that made me come back.
That's great that you were actually able to do that and they allowed you to come back. I
Yeah. I don't know if they would do that now.
yeah.
It was a quick thing. I just said, I want out. I need out. And they granted it for me. And I said, great, I'm out. And then I told my parents and they were like
Not
a little
happy.
shocked, but such is life.
And then after you graduated dental school, did you say you associated for a bit?
Yeah, I tried a lot of different things. I worked as in private practice, group practice. I even took a job as for a larger dental company back then, and they were doing quality assurance for their offices. And here I'm brand new out, and I was like, I'm not sure I'm qualified for this job, but I did that. I worked for Indian Health Services. I just tried as many things as I could and tried to learn some good habits and technique before I bought my own practice. I was out about 5 years, and then I bought my first solo practice. Uh, I I knew immediately when I was in that, I go, this is not the right fit for me to be in solo practice. It felt confining. I wanted time freedom, and I thought that was not the pathway.
And if I remember, did you say you at one point had 16 practices?
Through my career, I've had 16 different practices. I've had six at a certain given time. Washington, I had four. I had really good partner there, non-dental partner. So that was a really good run in Washington, and it gave me a lot of freedom of time. Plus, I could work. It just worked, and I understood the value of having multiple practices and multiple associates. It freed me up in a lot of ways. Then I came back to California, and I thought, oh, I'm going to duplicate that process, and it was much harder.
And now tell me about that jump from one practice to two to three, and then ultimately you said you had six at one time. What was that process like?
It was stressful, buying them and managing them, and I was still clinical with all of them on some level. It was a big juggle act, but I learned to be able to respond to things as opposed to react. I learned to prioritize, have priorities for what was really important, what was not important for me. I learned to be able to go home and walk through out the front door or back door and just like I did my best and I left it there and I didn't bring it home. And I think not that, and one practice is hard, and two is harder, and three just keeps getting exponentially harder. And you have more things that are on your plate and on your desk, and you just have to learn to, sift through that and find the stuff that's that's most important because you cannot absorb it all. And I got good at that, but it certainly came with its stresses for sure. Like with COVID coming, and I think at that time I had five practices, and I was like, oh, this is what's going to take me out. I thought for sure. I didn't think anything could, and I thought, oh, this might do it, but I got through it.
And you said that trying to duplicate what you had in Washington and California was more challenging. What were the challenges there?
I think dentistry was. I've been practicing for now 37 years, so my years of practice in Washington were from the late 1990s to 2010, 11. It was just easier. It just wasn't as much demand. And I moved to a state, California, that everything is really expensive and regulated and just harder.
Mm-hmm.
Washington has gotten more so that way, but I had a really great manager that, focused in on just the management of the practice. And so I didn't have to take that burden, home with me ever there. I left a good situation, but it was time for me to move on. I felt a little bit under the constraints of that partner and felt like I needed to move on. I was a good partner. She was a good partner, but it was time to move on. My family was from California, and it just was a natural move to move back to California. And when I came back, I thought, oh, I'll just be able to, step right in where I left off up there. But it was stressful and it took some work, but I did get there. Now I'm
And
back in one practice. Let me go. That feels good.
now tell me about your consulting and coaching and speaking career. Seems like you've started a whole second career.
I have, and it really it's about giving back. I've learned a lot of things throughout this journey. The journey is still going because I still practice at some level. I feel like I owe it to tell my story of how I got there, and I've come out on the other side healthy and happy, and I've made it not too stressful, even though I took on a lot of stressful things. And it hasn't been all, not everything has been total success for sure, but I feel like I have a really good story and a journey to share and help others maybe see the pathway that I took, or at least ventured down.
And your website is dentalsimplified.com. What would you
Right.
say what are some top tips for a dentist to have a smooth clinical day?
I think if someone can learn how to respond versus react to things that happen, and in just a typical solo practice, you probably have 10 changes of some sort in that day. A new patient add-on, somebody came off, procedure change, hygiene, whatever happens. There's all these different type of changes that can happen through that day. And I think you have to learn how to be able to not absorb it on such a, personal and deep level that affect you, and you just react to it and you get upset, and it just creates this chaotic vibe in the office. And I've had to learn that. It's not been just like, oh, I was given that gift, but I've learned to be much more thoughtful in how I react to and respond to situations that come up. And it makes it for a much simpler day. Another important aspect, I think, is having really good time management.
Mhm.
And if you're not good with time management, the whole day goes to hell really quick. You get behind, and patients are upset, and staff is upset, and just creates so much drama that just doesn't need to be.
To me, there's no worse feeling than running behind and knowing, you have a patient waiting for your chair, and then you also have hygiene checks to do, and
Yeah.
it compounds, and nobody's happy when they're
No,
running behind.
no. And a day leads to a week, and a week leads to a month of all this, and then it really builds up where everyone is like, why am I doing this job? So I learned good time management. Part of my consulting is explaining gears for doctors to have. For things, some things have to go slow, and some things you can go through so much quicker and faster, and not think you have to take some certain amount of time because that's what you've been told. And I use those efficiently every day that I work. Super slow at giving my shots, and I get still patients like, oh, that was a great shot, but I really take my time. I'm very thoughtful on how I do that. But once I know the patient's really numb, and I don't have to, think they're gonna jerk because I asked them if they're numb. If you ask a patient, hey, are you numb? They're gonna go, yeah, because they're afraid they don't want an extra shot. But I really make sure they're really numb, and then you can go to town. They're not there for a massage. They're there for, let's get this done and let me get on with my day. And that's how I look at it.
I totally agree. I do an endo ice test on the tooth, and if they feel the cold, they're not numb, and I make sure that they're totally numb. And once they're totally numb, like you said, I pop that isolation device in and just go to town, and
Yeah.
they don't want to be there any longer than they have to. And I try to, while they're getting numb, go and do my hygiene exams and try to get everything ready so I can focus on that procedure. What was your secret there for doing like a quick exam or a hygiene exam and not letting the patient feel like they're getting less of 100% of you?
Yeah, that's I think another really learned skill that I believe I have. I mean, some patients are wanting to have a lot of questions, they have a lot of concerns, and you have to be able to quickly learn who this patient is at a very, short notice. I try to be like full exams could take a long time if you let them. And I just try to focus in on what the problem is if I'm running behind to quickly go through exam, identify that and like, well, let's focus on that. Let's get that, either booked or, whatever we're going to do for the day. And I go, let's circle back around to the other things that obviously will probably need some attention, but focus on the thing what they're there for. And I think they appreciate that. And obviously, if you even get it done and help them that day, they're even more appreciative. So I've just learned to shorten them up. And I think I understand who my audience is. And, people are not real interested in what I have to say. I'm like, okay, I don't take offense to that. It's like someone saying, oh, I hate the dentist. I'm like, I've heard that a million times, but I mean, what are you going to do? There's nothing to respond to that. And I don't. And so I just feel like I know my audience, and I feel like they either want out and they don't want a lot of explanation. They just want the cliff notes, and let's do that. And other people, if they're leaning into it and want more explanation of what's going on and have a bigger treatment plan, then I'll take that time too. And then try to maximize my time in some other way throughout the day so I'm not, constantly behind.
If you're if you are tight for time and you got, Judy that's in there chatting away, do you actually tell Judy, I'm running a little bit behind. Let's get you back into focus on your problem. And how do you handle a situation like
I
that?
think I'd probably just go right into what her real issue is, what really bothering her, and what how we can manage that and focus in on what's the right fix for that, and really defocus on the other things. And not, I don't want to make them feel like I'm the one that's behind, and I'm not running a good shop there. So I try to focus in on them and focus in on the problem really specifically, and then like, okay, that's where we're going to go, let's do that, and we will, we can wrap this up at another time when we have a different day and possibly more time. So I don't ever try to short change them on anything. And I don't try to emphasize that I'm behind or, my day's not going like I planned. I just try to focus in on their specific problem.
What do you think is the biggest issue that patients leave with a bad experience? Do you think it's that they feel rushed or they didn't get numb, or what do you think it is in your years that you've
I think
noticed?
I think it comes down to two things, almost 100%. And I ask patients all the time if they've had a bad experience. I go, what was it? And I think it's a painful shot. They didn't like that and how it got administered. And number two, I think is the biggie, is they weren't numb, and they
Hmm.
felt it the whole time, and the doctor didn't pay attention to that and take care of that. I use a Ligajet. I mean, there's a lot of dentists that don't, and they, for whatever reason, I don't know, but that's been really important for my practice happiness and success of getting patients really numb. And there's a lot of other systems, but it's sort of the concept of what that is. And I fully believe in getting that patient really numb. That's, you take so much of the stress away from the whole day, and certainly procedures by that. And I
So you
think
got a patient in number 19, huge filling. You're doing a crown. What's your flow to get them numb?
first shot, superficially go in there really slow. They won't feel it. I just kind of infuse a little bit on the surface of the tissue. If I'm, let's say we're doing a lower block, second shot, then I'll go back. They're not feeling anything. I can go back where I need to go. I'll ask them how numb you're feeling, and usually they're like, I'm good. And I will typically use a Ligajet just to make sure, and I know that I'm ready to go. There's not going to be, oops, I'm feeling something. I just take that out of the equation. Certainly with anything with endo and extractions, I do that system for sure, and a crown too. But
In between your first two, your mandibular blocks, how long do you wait?
depends on what my day looks like. I try to get other things done, so I'm just constantly managing my day the best I can. Uh, I just, will either try to get my exam done and hygiene. I'll go over there and say, hey, I'm here, I'm available. Let me get in here and do that, and just try to use that time efficiently. It's even with endo. I take very few x-rays when I do endo, almost, almost none. But if I need time, I'll take an x-ray. I just build in time and stuff that I can kind of get here and there and keep up with the day so it just doesn't ever get away. And honestly, I can't even remember when I've had a day where I just like, crap, that was just went to hell for me. And I just was so behind and everything felt stressful. And that is a mindset I have, is not to have that. And I think I've been able to learn that pathway. And it's come with a price, because I certainly in the beginning, I did not manage my time nearly as well as I can now.
Yeah, I think that definitely comes with experience. Very similar. I give two lower blocks in between. I'll go do, hygiene check or two, and then I'll go around, buckle with some Septicane and go right around, kind of like a Ligajet like you do,
Yeah.
and do another hygiene check, and then endo ice test the tooth. And then if they're numb, it's go time.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree. I said they're not there for an hour massage, and you can get that procedure done in, half an hour, 45 minutes. They're like, great. And I think that adds to their happiness. It's not like they feel gypped on any level of that. I think a patient knows when hands are careful and thoughtful and how they touch them. And they know confidence and what they're feeling, and they understand unconfident hands as well, of that felt shaky, and I think if there's so many dentists that just don't get their patients numb, or they trust that the patient said they're numb and here they go, and they're just it's just so backwards for me to do it that way.
yeah, that's a good point. Is they know patients understand confidence. And early on in my career, I didn't do this, but now when I have that isolation device in and they're numb, I direct them where I need them to go. Say, Judy, up and to the left, or Judy, can you look
Yep.
down towards your shoes and to the right? I'm directing them where I need them to go,
Yeah.
and it helps me get the job done quicker. But that's definitely something patients appreciate. They want to get out of there and be done. And early on in my career, I felt funny about, like, I was bothering the patient to constantly
Yeah.
tell them to go to the left, to the right,
Yeah.
open.
For sure. It obviously comes with experience, and for a patient, that if I'm doing an exam and I feel like there's a lot of pushback and they don't want to hear what I have to say, I stop, and I'm not rude on any level, because I don't get into conflict with patients. That's another area I just don't go. But I'm like, okay, then let's give you what you want, and I don't worry about that. I don't go, oh gosh, I didn't do everything that, I didn't tell them everything they needed. And if they're shutting you down, then use your time wisely. Why spend that time with that individual when there's other people that really deserve your time and want your time, and that's where your focus should go.
That's so true. Some people they don't want to talk. They just want to get in and get out, and
Yep.
you don't need to waste that mental energy on
No.
a long rambling story. These are great tips. Tell me about your consulting business.
So my consulting business, it correlates with the speaking and what I want to talk about. I want to help. I want to work with 3 to 4 clients a month. They feel like they need help clinically. I'm not there for helping them with management. I'm not there to help them with, what kind of software they need. I'm not there to look at their insurance. I'm not there to necessarily tell them how to do things clinically. I'm there to help them find a pathway that makes every day simple and meaningful. And you go home and you focus on the things that are most important. That's your family and the things that you love. And I've been able to do that. And that's why I'm still standing here at 64, healthy, and I've had a great career, and I've been happy.
So you actually focus more on the clinical because that's a great niche because a lot of coaches or consultants do focus more on, the managerial side, the back end things,
Yeah.
where you're actually going in there and helping the dentist get more efficient with their actual clinical dentistry.
Yeah, and time and if they want help clinically of how I've done things where I've been able to, cut time down on procedures, I'm happy to do that. I mean, dentists in a whole are, don't want to be told necessarily how to do clinical dentistry, or so I will approach that as how they need or want that would fit their needs. I do have gears that I talk about, like I said, first gear, second gear, third gear, and I have sort of a process of what those look like and how that can help them use those gears. And those are clinical gears. Like I said, injection is gear one. You're going slow, really methodical. And gear five is your patient's numb, and you're like, okay, I'm going to get this crown prep done, and I'm going to get it. Let's get it on. So I think those are the mindset of how you do things. And even with PPOs, you get paid so, and it's not all about money, but you're not getting paid like a fee for service. And so you have to learn to maximize your time and, procedures. You can't do an endo in 3 different times and spend 2 hours each time. I mean, you'll go broke. So learn to be efficient with how you do procedures. I mean, I love the line that's, is, perfection is the enemy of good. And I think that's so true for dentists just constantly wanting, I mean, we're trained to be perfectionists, but you can't give perfection. I mean, if you look in someone's mouth and you see they have a lot of lousy dentistry, that patient is probably only allowed those dentists to do that type of work. And you just have to sometimes let things go. You can't just keep grinding away on things because you think I'm going to make it a little bit better. Learn to know when good is good enough and I'm done, and you move on. And that's worked for me.
And what would you say about, I totally agree with everything you just said. And also perfectionism. I see it as being a major problem with young dentists. Like you said, they we're trained to try to be perfect. And a lot of these young dentists, all they've known is success. They did well in school, and then they get out into the real world and all of a sudden, they have an upset patient or they got a bad review and they just mentally beat themselves up. And it's, it's every day is not going to be perfect.
No. And I think if you can get through that and change that mindset, and that's what I do want to help with the clients. And they're going to need, some of my clients are going to need different things, and I can adjust to that. But I think you can just beat yourself up for so many years, and then you're in the middle of your career and you're in your 40s. You're like, I'm done. I want out. I mean, I'd gone through the whole gamut of okay, I'm done. I've done this. I'm going to be done it when I'm in my 50s. And I thought, that's for sure. I'm not going to be clinically practicing. I'm just going to be doing different things. And here I am, 64, and I'm down to my last practice, which feels pretty good. But
that's awesome, man. I love what you're up to, and I love how you're giving back and helping out other dentists. Mark, tell us, how do we find out more about what you're up to?
Website is dentalsimplified.com, and that's the best way to get a hold of me. And I can reach out to you, or you can reach out to me if you contact me through email, and we can talk about any specific needs that you might want help. And
Love it. Dr. Mark Davis, thank you so much for joining us. Such a great episode.
thank you.
Thanks again for listening to the Stress Free Dentist podcast. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at info@thestressfreedentist.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Until the next episode, I'm Dr. Eric Block, the Stress Free Dentist.